Ms. Fodor?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Present.
Mr. Matt?
Here.
Ms. Paulini?
Present.
Ms. Robinson?
Here.
Mr. Coe? Not here.
Okay, you want to lead us in the pledge? Sure. All right, everybody, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good evening, everyone. Do we have anyone signed up to speak tonight?
No one can sign up tonight.
Okay, before you have the meeting minutes from February 2nd, 2023, please review them at this time. Mr. Coe is absent. Okay. That is not on. Oh, the roads are going to be
Yes.
probably. Does anyone have any changes to the meeting minutes? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 2nd, 2023 as presented.
Seconded.
Motion, comments, concerns? Ms. Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Mr. Matt?
Aye.
Ms. Paulini?
Aye.
Ms. Robinson?
Aye.
Ms. Fodor?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-1 absent.
Good evening, Mr. Hedges.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. At this time, we would ask your attention for a product presentation by Lennar Homes. We have with us tonight Richard Murphy, who is Lennar's senior land planner for the Chicago metro market. He's going to talk to us a little bit about the Chicago market right now, what's happening with homes, and then a couple of new models that they will be building up there. Some smaller homes, a little more. So, Rick, please.
Good evening, sir. Thanks for coming. Sorry for the weather. We bring it up for special occasions.
Appreciate your hospitality, Mr. President and members of the trustees. So we also appreciate your hospitality and letting us build in the village, and we're very happy to be here. As you may know, I think our site plan calls for, I think we're at 179 homes in total. We're about, I think at this point, about 25% through with building that out. So I think we're really pleased with the performance. We are, as everybody knows, we've all experienced a lot of inflation in our costs and everything, and that coupled with rising interest rates. What we're seeing is, I think if you do just a quick little bit of math, we see that the a buyer's purchasing power, in this kind of price range, this has lost about $110,000 worth of purchasing power. So, those folks are, at least temporarily cut out of the market unless we try to take some action to, equalize the home prices. So, what we've decided to do, what we like to do, is expand the product lineup and offer 4 new home models that are architecturally very similar to what we have. So it's very harmonious with what's out there already. And I think if I'm assuming you'll be asking about pricing and everything. It's all on our website, actually. If you've looked, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. But original lineup, I think the base pricing is about we're in upper threes. It's about $450 base pricing. So that that's about a $60,000 spread in base price. What I'll tell you also is options. The option buy up that we get is probably in the $35,000 range. So the average selling price right now is about $435, somewhere in there. So what we're trying to do is obviously broaden that market, take care of the people that one day they thought they were going to be able to qualify, and then the next period of time they just got cut out. So we're offering homes down to about 1,455 square feet. I mean, the reality of what happens is this kind of gets people in the door, and our sales folks are really good at basically trying to get them into the home that they can, if they were, you know, they can afford and they really want. So, you know, that's, so we're at like, so the rates right now, you know, last year and a half ago, they were around 3. Now, I think most recently, a mortgage is, I think last week is 6.625, something like that, a straight mortgage. We also have our own. Lennar has a mortgage company, so we're able to sometimes incentivize and start bringing the rates down for those folks too. So we, you know, there's buy downs where you can have a 4.5% 7-year ARM, something like that, or even a buy down on a fixed rate down to just over 5%. So it's not free, but there's a lot of things that we do. We're a home builder. We're here to build homes and not just sit and watch and complain about interest rates and everything else. So I think I did send over a packet. I don't know if you can see this. But again, what I will say is the existing homes are initial offering, I think, in partial basements. And these generally will be essentially 2 stories will be full basements. So the square footage you see will be pretty similar to the square footage you'll see in the basement. So there's that extra living space that, you know, it doesn't sound, it's not quite feel as small as it looks right here. So that range, I mean, we're taking the selling price down. It's a change of maybe about $40,000 if you look at the website. So the prices are all on the website. You can see that. Again, there is a, you know, estimated take on options and upgrades and so forth, but we think it's going to fit in quite nicely. So I appreciate the courtesies that you've afforded us, and happy to answer any easy questions.
Again, just to add some color to this, this is not something that we need to do any action on. This is just something that we thought was important for the board to know. Something going on within our community that one of our home builders is trying to adjust the best they can to the market, offering different offerings. So.
I have an easy question for you.
Yes, sir.
So the lot size itself isn't changing, just the home on it, which means these homes that are smaller will probably have bigger yards as compared to the other.
Bigger yards, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it's you know, because that would take probably a little more action on the part of the village to be able to do that. So we're not asking for any kind of new fit on that. Not at all. Yes, ma'am.
Just another question, the changes in the market and everything.
Yeah.
Are you losing at this point the first time home buyers or seniors, or, I mean, can you?
I would be
Somewhere in there?
speculating, but I think you're talking more about, you know, first or second, where the, you know, it's a stretch the first time, you know. And, you know, the tide does float all boats. So if you have a house that you're selling, you know, you can, you know, a lot of us have been able to roll that in, and, you know, maybe we get more price on the house we sold, so we kind of all together, you know. But the folks that are running out of a, you know, coming out of an apartment or rental kind of situation. So, you know, affords them a chance to get the pride of ownership, home ownership, and, you know, get that stake in the ground, start building equity, you know. So, yeah, and the interesting things, you know, you hear a lot of predictions in the market, and of course we heard inflation was higher than they like, so nobody knows what's next with the Fed, but I think the interest rates are more tied to like I think a 10-year treasury. So you know, it does not necessarily interest rates jump in step with that Fed rate, but I think a lot of it depends on how nervous the financial markets are, right? If they think it's kind of about there, nobody's sweating it too much. But but like I said, we have a mortgage company and we have a very high take rate on it because of the deals that we offer folks. You know, it's kind of, you know, we're working together to sell houses and make loans, and it really helps us to be able to offer those products to our buyers.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I would just add one comment, and that's that we're seeing very similar things on a national level. The big home builders are doing the same thing. They're writing down mortgages in some cases, adding additional features, making houses smaller, trying to make it more affordable. But they're not cutting back on their estimates. So the forecast for housing is still strong beginning in the second quarter this year.
It's a good point. I forgot to actually make. So what we were seeing is the problem we always have is none of these things ever seem to go in in the same cycle as you want. So we had that inflation on the building side, and the increases come real quick. The decreases take a little more time. So if lumber is expensive, it takes away a while to get into the cost of the doors and all the other parts of the home and manufactured products and everything. So by then, rates were going up, so the affordability was down. We're still having these prices up here. So the end of last year was very difficult because traffic was just people. The other thing is they have to get used to the fact of where the rates are probably going to be for a while. At some point, our prediction is more that, the folks that are in the home with a high 2-3% mortgage rate, they're not moving unless they really have to, right? So that market, maybe the supply is going to be lower. It'll help us a little bit. And then the other fact that folks are between our products and folks going, maybe there's a 5% or 6% interest rate for the foreseeable future. And I'm just gonna, deal with it and still buy a home, So we are seeing traffic creeping up and, like Mr. Hedges said, it's the market is optimistic, at least currently, but, future, we don't know exactly. But we need to be ready to adapt to it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and your hospitality again.
You stay when
Love
you're
working here. Yes.
You're welcome to make your exit. You don't have to stick around.
Okay, thanks. All right, everyone, have a good night.
And Rick, your team out here has been great to work with. Thank you.
I'm pleased to hear it. Always makes my job easier too.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
We love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, with that, we would ask for consideration of the resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Hampshire Fire Protection District for plan review and inspection services. You have an agenda supplement for Mr. Ray, and he'll explain this project.
A few months ago, Chief Herman and his team approached village staff with basically the idea that in August of last year, they made one of their team members a full-time fire inspector. So that person had been working closely with Safe Built for quite a while to go along with them on building inspections and, check for fire code violations and things of that nature. And now that they have a person that is able to do that full time, they approach the village asking if they could take over that official capacity and handle that portion of the plan reviews and inspections related to the fire code and the life safety code. Staff discussed it with Safe Built. Jerry Nelson, who has since retired, made the note that it's actually very common for Safe Built to work with both fire districts and internal fire departments. So this was nothing new for them. They accepted it very quickly. We're happy to go along with it. And we've worked out some logistical details. Nothing about the permit fees is going to change. One of the exhibits that I neglected to include in the packet is our current permit fees, which I printed out for all of you. Nothing on those are going to change. The village's portion of those that we receive is not going to change. It's just that the fire district is going to receive the 80% that Safe Built has been for fire code and life safety code activities. With that, I'll just note that the Fire Protection District has agreed to this. Their board approved the same agreement on February 8th. So if there's any questions, we can discuss those. Otherwise, staff recommends approval of this.
Can you better explain how this bills? Because you're saying 80% of the cost for the fire protection part of it will go to the fire protection district, but then there's still 20%, and that's of that particular.
Yeah, that particular. So
portion?
if you look at any given inspection, it's 20%, 80% is the share. So 20% always comes to the village. And up until now, 80% of all of the fees have gone to Safe Built.
Okay.
So what happens is a person pays in Community Core, our online permit system, that comes to the village, the whole thing, and then Safe Built just invoices us for their 80%. So now Safe Built will drop off from their invoices, the fire and life safety code activities, and we'll receive an invoice from the fire protection district for those. So if anything, it's adding, one extra invoice that the finance and accounting team have to take care of monthly, probably.
So there's still an alert, well, I mean, I know they have a whole bunch of other inspections I'm sure that they're doing. So that particular part, then there's a notification that goes, since it's primarily that goes to the fire department. Or is everything still comes here?
Maybe I'm misunderstanding. All of the permit fees will still come to the village, and the fire protection district will just bill us for their share.
Okay,
The fire protection district will be utilizing community core just as all of the other plan reviewers and inspectors do for safe built. We've already set up the fire inspector inside that system, and he's been in it for a while, get comfortable.
Basically, what we're doing is that 80% of the plan review fee will go to the fire department instead of the plant to safety. So it'll help the fire department absorb the cost of their inspection.
So I have a quick question for you. This covers new construction, new permits, things like that, whether it's upgrades or new building, whatever it may be. What is the current either ordinance or fire code on, is there continuous inspections of businesses? Do they have to be inspected annually? Is that part of the safe built thing? Is this part of that agreement? How does that work?
So the first part, when a new business comes to town and they take over a building, for example, the Gardenberry, they came in, they took over an existing building. They didn't have to get a permit they just did a bunch of internal, what do we call it? Yeah, superficial cosmetic work, carpeting, flooring, things like that. So they never had to actually get a permit. What they did have to get was a new certificate of occupancy to make sure that the building was still safe. And that is something that was written into the building codes that the board approved in the fall, was that anytime a building changes ownership, changes tenancy, changes use, there's a new certificate of occupancy to make sure that it's safe. There is not, Safe Built does not perform any annual inspections. I believe the fire district does do, in fact, I know they do because I did it at Village Hall not long ago. They come in and inspect and make sure that your fire extinguisher has, been checked, your smoke alarms, your emergency lights, all of those things. But is that what you're referring to? Kind of
Yeah, so that annual, so like Gardenberry, for example, they didn't need a permit for the renovations because they didn't do anything structural. They didn't do any major renovation, right, on the inside.
Right.
Now, is it every year the fire protection district has in their own schedule, they'll go in to check, are the sprinklers working?
Yes.
Do you have the fire extinguishers you need, those type of things? But that's for their code, that is not a Hampshire ordinance,
No,
correct?
it's actually the Hampshire ordinance, but
It is a Hampshire ordinance.
We delegate that to them.
Yeah, completely understood, but that is a Hampshire ordinance. So this then puts not just that responsibility on the fire protection district on an annual basis, but also at the initial, whether it's a building occupancy change, a new building or a new owner that does massive updates.
Correct. All of the above.
All of the above. Okay. And sorry, I have one more follow-up to that. What is the reporting measure for the fire protection district to the village on their annual checks and any of these? Does the village receive reports that they have passed inspection and that they continue to pass the annual inspections so we know that everybody is within code?
On the new inspections that they'll be doing in an official capacity now, all of that will be in community core, just like it has been for Safe Built. As far as in the past, what they have done with their annuals, I don't think, we don't receive copies of every building's annual inspection.
So will that go into Safe Built now too, so that we have a record of it, or?
No,
I don't think so.
We have not made any change. We could look into that, Trustee Kelly, if you'd like us to, into receiving those annual fire inspections.
Or if there's just some type of reporting, if it's our ordinance that they're checking on in our building code, just to make sure that.
We can look into that. I'm sure they would share it with us if you'd like to. Now that all of this information, all the other things that Josh explained will be in community core. So the fire
For
department,
this stuff, yeah.
fire department will actually have their own desktop, their own.
I just didn't know if this IGA moves all of the other into there as well, so that there's a central tracking for.
The
all
only
the
thing that's
stuff.
not in there are the annual fire inspections, and we'll check on that.
Okay.
And I
They
do
don't charge a
know,
fee for that either.
I do know that
Okay.
we've been in communication on several occasions about individual businesses that have not, maybe not allowed them in to do annual inspections and stuff. And so
Yeah, we were able to actually make that happen.
because it's our code, we were able to engage State Built and enforce it as well, and it's our code. they enforce it for us, but when they hit roadblocks, they engage us and then we can do more than they
And what you mean
can.
is when the fire department hits roadblocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, okay, that's good to know, because I know like with these things, if somebody doesn't pass, there's like steps they go through for a reinspection and fees. So I just wasn't sure how the other side of that.
I can tell you
worked.
from personal experience that the fire department does follow up with their annual fire inspections, because every once in a while we have something that fails too.
Yeah.
Okay, they follow up with us.
Great, thank you.
They're kind of very repetitive. If you don't- if you
Very
don't-
thorough.
And it's the same person that would do all of that, I assume? Okay.
And realistically, I mean, the long and short of it is instead of us paying Safe Built to do it, we're gonna be paying the fire department to do it because they have somebody on staff that's certified to do it. So instead of money going to a private company, money's going to the fire department.
I would assume it's good that the fire department is getting direct eyes on the buildings in Hampshire as well, since they service it. should anything
They
ever
go
happen.
along on all these inspections anyway. This,
Yeah.
they'll just be looking at the paperwork now too.
Yeah.
Anyone have any other questions about the intergovernmental agreement? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 23-04, resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Hampshire Fire Protection District.
So,
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns? Ms. Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Palastrellini?
Aye.
Mr. Robinson?
Aye.
Ms. Fodor?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Mr. Matt?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-1 absent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would now ask your consideration of a motion to, to approve additional costs in the amount of $6,800 for architectural services or improvements at the Hampshire Police Department associated with the escalation grant award, bringing the total cost of improvements to $88,992. We've just been talking about Safe Built and our own building code, and the contractor in this case, the low bidder in this case, is not aware that an architectural plan review would be required because there are load-bearing walls in this project. So he had to come back to us with an additional add-on for the architectural services. This is required, and it was also not included in the other quotes. So you're asking for consideration of this additional cost.
If I could jump on, you said then none of the other bids had that
Correct.
included as well.
Any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the additional cost in the amount of $6,800 for architectural services for improvements at the Hampshire Police Department. Questions, comments, concerns?
so this still keeps them as the low bid, if we assume this cost would have gone the same across the board.
Yes, we would have to have gone out and asked everybody else what their architectural costs were.
Do we foresee any more extra costs?
No, we don't. At this point, we're getting pretty close to doing the breaking ground, so
Good.
I don't think we're running anything else.
Now, I did see in some of the quotes, they specifically called out, this does not include architectural costs, drawings, things like that. In this quote, I didn't see that listed here.
It wasn't called out specifically, but it was not included. Clearly, it was not included.
Any other questions? I have a first and a second. Ms. Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kelly?
All right,
Ms. Fodor?
Aye.
Mr. Robinson?
Aye.
Ms. Palastrellini?
Aye.
Mr. Matt?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-1 absent.
Thank you. We would now ask your consideration of a motion to authorize the purchase of laptops and other police vehicle equipment in the amount of $47,722. Chief Pan is going to make a brief presentation to you right now about technology in the police department. We talked considerably about this both in this room as well as during the interviews for police chief. Very high priority for the department. And so Chief Pan is going to talk a little bit about the existing circumstances, the situation, why we think it's important to do something now, unbudgeted, and then what we plan to do next year.
So my presentation today is just about the technology of the police department, the existing technology and what our plan is going forward. We do need significant improvements in just about every piece of technology that the officers and the office staff use on a daily basis. So if we take a look at the current technology that we have, we identified a problem with our internet connection. We were woefully behind in the speed that's already been corrected. And so then we look at the hardware that we have in place. Our server, which is our only server in-house, is a 2012 server, and it's operating at capacity. We frequently have to go in and work with the vendor, our IT vendor to free up capacity and move things around and try to fix that. all of our data for both our records management system and the video, our video management systems are kept on that same server. There's a network access storage device, but it's all part of the whole system. And it's only got about 100 gigs of free space right now, which is not enough. 8 out of 10 of the squad car laptops are 8 years old. So they're every day. In fact, just before I left the station, an officer was in there trying to troubleshoot a problem with his squad car laptop before he could even go on the street. The squad cars don't have any printing capabilities. So one of the things that would really bring about efficiency would be to improve the process to issue citations and make it quicker and more accurate. And it's very easy to do that. It just takes some funding to get the products purchased. So we could do digital ticketing in the squad cars. And then there's also no report writing capability in the squads. So the officers always have to come back to the station to do their reports. And they spend a lot of time sitting back there in the booking area, just typing reports where they could be out and about on the street. We have about half of the in-house computers need replacement. They're not too bad. We do have what's called a live scan machine, which is our fingerprint machine. And I honestly don't know the age on it, but it's very old. And
It's within the last 10 years or so, because we replaced it.
yeah,
As I first got on the board, we never had that before. We always had to go somewhere else to get fingerprints processed.
and I actually just received a notice today from the state that their server that our machine attaches to is going to be taken out of service at the end of the year. And so I need to find out in the next few days if our machine can connect to the new process that they're using. And if not, we'll have to replace that. But at this point, it's still operational. So we spent a lot of time troubleshooting these things and, hours and hours and hours, whether it's me or the sergeants or even the officers with their squad car computers. We also have most of our in-house systems are still, even though our police reports are done on the server, on a records management system called Crime Star, everything else that we do in office is still with paper and pen and files and, from the operational side to the administrative side too. So performance evaluations and personnel files and our scheduling is electronic, but most everything else is paper-based. So I'd like to improve all of that in the next few years. So the plan overall, probably my top priority is to upgrade the server. And then we move to getting our data off of that server and into cloud space. Backup systems, whether it's we have a backup on our server right now, but there's cloud-based, like the body camera footage, the squad car footage, that's all best maintained off-site. And then also the records management system that I'm interested in is through Kane County, and that also would take our data off-site. But it would be maintained and serviced through Kane County and their systems. So we also need to replace all the squad car computers. We need to install printers in the squad cars. And this is going to what I was just talking about, moving to the New World records management system. And then shifting technology maintenance to the vendors. So that's a big reason why I'm interested in this, in either cloud-based storage or in Kane County maintaining that storage backup. The other things are things I've already talked about, but I really want to transition to as much electronic record keeping and documentation and workflow as I possibly can. If we move on to the next slide, this is the overall cost of the technology that I just talked about. You can see the total cost of everything is around $150,000. If we're able to do this purchase tonight, that would take that $47,000 out of the fiscal year 23 budget. And then we would land about $92,000 in fiscal year 24, and then $20,000 in fiscal year 25. And after that, at this point, we would put a plan in place to replace technology on a regular basis, so we don't have these big lump numbers coming at once like they are right now. But there's also going to be some new annual fees that come along with some of this, some of the newer systems. So down at the bottom there, I have the new annual recurring charges. If we did everything I talked about, including body cameras, we would have about $12,000 more a year in annual software maintenance fees.
That number isn't like, I just would like to say, by moving some of this responsibility up into the cloud and those systems being maintained in the cloud, a lot of times the software and maintenance and troubleshooting and that kind of stuff is included in the yearly maintenance. And so if we were to take a look at it, and I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but I know it's substantial just based on the fact that I've been here a while. Amount of money that we spend with Entree per year, just at the police department troubleshooting stuff, that if we upload or offloaded some of the systems up into the cloud, we wouldn't have that cost either. So there's never really a cost savings, if you will, but it's not as, it's offsetting, if that makes sense. Does that?
I guess I have a question on that. Chief, have you investigated into or looked into potential, I see the King County SAS for New World, but have you looked at other options instead of bringing a new physical server in to move those records management and what is on the server into a provider that does cloud-based?
So I know from previous experience, the data that we have right now on that server, every vendor will tell you that they'll import it into a new system, but it's very, very difficult and very cost prohibitive to do that. So for the legacy data, the best thing to do is to maintain what we have. So it would be a new server that's not going to break down. And then the cost for our current records management system is about $1,400 a year. And if we move to just basically an archive system for that, so we're not accessing it every day and we don't have multiple users, we have one user, it drops down to about $300 a year from that vendor to maintain that server. And then we would just have to search both the new system and the old system. And also from my previous experience, these records management systems are very expensive. And they're very manpower intensive as far as configuration and regular maintenance. And so the Kane County's system, what they're doing is very similar to what we did where I came from. What is where you have one large agency that owns the records management system, and then they offer this subscription-based connection into their system. So we just become users of their system, and the fee, the annual fee is only about $3,800 a year. That's significantly less than it would cost. I mean, in where I came from, we spent $4.5 million on a record management system, the in-house system. And so I haven't researched other options for this records management system, but I know that this 3,800 is a bargain, because we're also offloading all of the back end. So all the data management, all the configuration, we would have to configure initially, but then the ongoing maintenance of the system from the back end would be done by the county. Any improvements to the servers that they have or replacements of the servers, that would all be included in the cost, of that they're facing. I'm sure that we would see increases over time in the monthly fee.
Well, I think so. The King County one, the New World Record Management, that's the one that I'm saying is the SaaS model that looks like a good move to go into. My question is on the physical server, the $30K that you would need for that new physical box. Could whatever that physical box is being used for be moved into a cloud type of infrastructure without having to pay $30K for hardware?
So, yes. So I would have to maintain a server. What I would need to do if we move forward with all of this is, once we figure out, like, if we can go to the New World system, then I would contact, before we replace that server, I would contact our vendor and rework the needs. What do we need for this?
Because that becomes the archive.
Right.
Okay.
And then also, if we moved the body camera, if we move that to either a different in-house server, depending on how we do this, if we move it to a different in-house server or a cloud-based system that would take all that data off too.
Right.
Yeah, so our overall need for that.
So that may change a little bit based on what those needs are. Okay.
Yes.
Crime Star's a pretty big company though, correct? And this New World's a pretty big company.
New World's much.
So what I'm getting at is it's not like we have Fred's crime management system. Crime Star's a pretty big system. The problem is, as I would assume, is that like data, I don't know, your data integrity is probably not the best, just in general. I'm not talking ill of anybody, just of any business system, that when you go import from one system to another, you always find that your data wasn't as.
Right,
nice
that
as you
wasn't,
wanted.
I guess that wasn't my question. I wasn't really, I know how data can build up over time. It was more of we don't have a temperature controlled server room and data center, and there are other considerations that go when you buy a physical box.
Right.
My question, and thank you, Chief, for answering it, was more of is this a mandated thing that we have a physical box, or could those things also be moved into the cloud? And it sounds like it would be more of an archive, one user, it's for historical data. It's not like it's an operational server where you're paying in it every day type of thing. Yeah. Okay.
I have two questions, if I may. First of all, regarding the upgrading of the live scan machine, you mentioned that the state server will cease operation soon. Is the projected fiscal year 2025 expenditure then soon enough, or is that something that we're not sure yet based on state data?
I did just find this out today.
Okay.
And so I don't know. I'd have to figure out if our system's capable first, and then I can answer that question.
Okay. That's what I figured. Second question is, how much do we currently spend on maintenance and lost patrol time? So, because I know that's probably two different people who might be able to answer that, but looking at these expenditures, I'm thinking these costs might be offset by
I
what we
can
would
get
save
those.
on those things.
I can get those numbers. I don't have them. I mean, I can give you anecdotal stories, but it's a lot, but I don't know really how much,
Okay.
when our server crashed a couple weeks ago, it was about 16 hours, 2 days of $100 an hour or $90 an hour, and plus my time. And it was a lot. It was, so. But we can get that more information, more in detail if you'd like to get
Yeah, I
it.
think there's certain costs we look at that are just the cost of doing business. Seems like in that category.
Well, especially the loss of patrol time, because I don't think people
Well,
are,
and they're not expected to be IT professionals.
yeah, that's.
And a simple fact, I mean, even if you look at it, let's say that the computers were working just fine the way that they are. But the fact that they have to go back to the station and write a report rather than being able to pull into a parking lot or pull off to the side of the road, finish their report on a call and then go back to doing what they're doing. I don't know how you calculate that, but.
Well, I mean, it's just hours and hours of time that could be differently spent and perhaps more efficiently.
Yeah.
Doing
It
the
has to
job
do with
that we're
morale and
asking
just
them
the
to.
image of the department too.
Yeah.
I see a scribbled handwritten ticket versus a nice printed out ticket, like a receipt at the store.
Either way, if I get a ticket, I don't care. Not really.
It's nice at least
happy,
people read the date you have to show up.
Yeah,
for work.
but
For those of us who haven't gotten a ticket,
Yeah.
you were using the old, sorry, the old ticket books, and they just write them
Yes.
out and put it,
That's what they do now.
all right, and then copies of that get taken to the judicial.
Yeah.
We
We
personal
handwrite,
experience, Huntley does print theirs out.
Okay.
we handwrite the citations.
Make it.
They're physically turned into our, to Gina. Gina then, manually enters them into Crime Star for our purposes, and then they're physically transported to the county.
Now, being on Kane County system, are we able to just electronically just get
Yes,
them at the end of the
all
night?
of that. So this slide is actually representative of the New World system. It doesn't have the digital ticketing component represented on it. But basically, what you can see is, the officers would have every squad car would have the capability to, for them to write their reports in the car, for them to issue citations from the car. All of that data is then transmitted to the county. And then we have access in-house to that data, and we can manage our own data, but it's already at the county. It's kept on their system. We're also sharing data with all the other agencies in Kane County. So, you know, if we have an incident that happened, obviously Hampshire's not an island. And you know, crime, as we see just with the burglaries that we had in December, they go from, you know, city to city to city or village to village, and it's all over the place. So we can now share all that data as we go onto the system. And also, the traffic citation data is also immediately transmitted to, every 30 minutes actually, transmitted to the courthouse. So now we don't have any, you know, we don't have any physical turning in tickets. We don't have, you know, our administrative assistant manual entering data. It's all just there. And so it really does improve a lot of efficiencies. And, you know, I said in the beginning, my primary priority, redundant, but it was the server replacement. But right now in fiscal year 23, we do have a significant amount of money that will cover this expense in the tow fund. And so the tow fund needs to be correlated to traffic enforcement. And so if we upgrade the computers in the squad cars and we can integrate the digital ticketing right now, even if we don't have the records management system, we can still start using the digital ticketing, and all that efficiency from that will happen now. The only thing is, Gina will still have to manually pull up a screen with the citations that were written and then enter them into our records management system for record keeping purposes until we go to the bigger system. Then she won't have to do that. So what I'm asking, going backwards, what I'm asking for right now today with the dollar amount that you see in the agenda supplement is for these semi-rugged G-Tech squad car computers, which are also, they have backlit keyboards. They have cellular built into them. I just have to transition to SIM cards instead. We use the little pucks right now. But this will get all of that into that computer. It'll then that computer sits in that docking station, and then this is the printer that prints out all the citations. It includes all the hardware, all the wiring, the actual labor to do the installations in 8 of our squad cars for the whole system, and then just one additional squad car will just need the printer. And then I think there's an $11,000. That was a surprise to me, but it's the $11,000 configuration cost from the vendor for the digital ticketing system, but that's proprietary. It integrates with the county. And so I don't really have a choice in that as far as how we do that. It's all done through Tyler.
Which is the same company that we're transitioning to at the village home. Are there any benefits to that, to them being on the same software?
Not particularly.
No,
Just
curious. I have a question for you. I know it's probably ancillary, but so these docks look like they're specific to the G-Tech laptops. Is there a service life or something like that? Do you have a commitment out of G-Tech that says that these laptops are gonna, or this type of mount is going to work moving forward? The reason why I ask is these rugged laptops, they change form factors all the time. G-Tech is one of the big players in the law enforcement community. I think Kane County and the state of Illinois use G-Tech laptops instead of the Panasonic Toughbooks, and then Dell now is in the field with them. The question that I have is these mounts, these docks are proprietary. So say in 5 years when we do this replacement plan again, are we going to be looking at having to buy new docks as well? Because we went with a specific dock that fits this generation laptop. I'm sorry, I'm a tech guy. And so like, that's one of the reasons why me personally, I don't buy proprietary docks, because there's companies out there like Ram Mounts makes good ones that unfold into the floor underneath seats, and then you can put it generic,
So that's actually a Havas dock.
Okay.
And so it's not proprietary to G-Tech, but
Okay.
it is, I mean, it's still configured for that computer. I mean, you can get adapter plates to go from one dock to the next. The docks that we have in the car right now are just they're too old for the adapter plates to work.
Mhm.
And so that's why I would have to go with this, but it's not a G-Tech dock, it is a Havas dock,
Okay.
which is more.
As long as it's a little bit of future-proof, or as future-proof as we can go, because I mean, I just bought one of these mounts the other day and that's like $600.
Yeah.
These laptops are substantially less than the other brands, right?
They're,
Oh,
oh, yeah,
100%.
about half.
About half
Oh,
the
yeah.
cost.
Oh, yeah. G-Tech's a big player in the law enforcement industry for that purpose. Like I said, I think Kane County and I think the state of Illinois uses G-Tech laptops. So, like I said, I didn't want you buying stuff that we were locked into and then 5 years down the road, we're gonna replace 10 laptops and oh, by the way, we're gonna replace all the mounts that are only 5 years old. That are steel, but they're a different plate on top.
And some of the other brands, I mean, the rugged, you know, these are called semi-rugged, the rugged computers, I mean, literally they're designed for Navy SEALs jumping out of airplanes. You know?
Which is good enough for coffee being spilled and being on the road all the time.
Right.
It really does make a difference.
It does make a difference, but these are sufficient for sure.
Just one ask for you and then Chief and then Ms. Lyons to consider. When we look at the line items for your costs of the technology plan, outside of the server upgrade and the body cameras, which the body cameras related to a grant, so I get that. And the laptops really aren't that high of a cost. And I know when we looked at the treasurer's report last meeting, we look like we might be on a trajectory for a surplus at the end of the year. So something to maybe consider is, can we pull forward from FY '24 into FY '23 rather than having it hit next year's budget? If we have a surplus of this year's budget for things that are 2,900, 9,000, you know, things that aren't very big budgets, rather than just putting it off so it's in the next budget, if we are looking at potentially having a surplus.
Jessica, if I could just address that briefly, and then maybe Lori would too. It is likely that we will have a revenue, higher revenue than expected, and probably a surplus. But it's also likely that we'll enter the next budget year is going to be very difficult. We'll roll up the budget for the first time tomorrow, and next week we'll meet. But I would not encourage you to spend anything just because we have funds available this year. I would not encourage you to spend.
Well, and that's part, I guess that would kind of defend what I'm saying, is that if next year's budget's already looking very tight, if we can take things off of next year's budget and use it on a surplus for this budget, even though a surplus this year.
Those same funds that we don't spend this year will be available next year. They don't go away.
Understood. But what I'm saying is if it's already tight next year, it doesn't matter if we hold off till next year to make the payment versus bring it into this year. We're just able to take it out of this fiscal and then say, okay, if we had to have budgeted this in FY '24, is that something that then frees it up for others? I mean, I have no idea where the budget is for next year. I know we'll start talking about it, but we do have a surplus in this fiscal year. That's why I'm saying these are smaller line items that we're talking about potentially bringing up. I don't know if they were time-based. That's why I wasn't sure if like they could only take place in FY '24 because you need the laptops first and they're going to take so long and it wouldn't be ready until after May. So if that's a consideration too, that's fine. But I just wasn't sure there's some of that time factor to it.
The tow fund is what was available. So that's where we looked, and the expenditures that were eligible for the tow fund expenditures and a high priority for the department.
Yeah.
Especially for morale and technology that we talked about. So we are bringing you something that's not budgeted for next year in that order.
I do want to jump in then too, is we do have other departments that didn't ask for things and put them into the next year that could use those things as well. So that's something to keep in mind. I want to commend you, Chief, for having this come up and finding a place where the money is already there to fund so that it covers the expenses. And that's money, if I'm correct, that comes in, that's from the tolls and that has to be used towards, as you said, traffic.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's paid for, the money is sitting there. And then the camera grant is 43. So am I reading this correct, that about 90,000 of this is already covered?
Yes.
Okay, so from that then, subtracting that, we've only really got 60,000 that we're covered.
Yes. And we won't buy body cameras this year unless we get the camera grant. I mean, that's.
Is that requested or has been filed and you haven't?
They haven't opened it up yet.
There's detail,
Okay.
they've been talking about this camera grant for the last 2 or 3 years now, since the mandate had come out and since they started talking body cams. And the state hasn't figured out how they're going to release the funds or how they're going to release the funds or who they're going to release the funds to and who we need to apply. All we keep hearing though is that the grant is coming. And so there was a lot of conversation at the very beginning about whether or not the grant funding for the body camera could also be used for the storage, and that's where the cost is. A lot of municipalities in the state have the ability to pay for the hardware, but then don't have the ability to pay for the storage. So I think that they've worked that out. I think that there's conversation so much of the fact that it's going to be eligible to be used for both, but it's not going to be sustained. So like once you sign on and you get the cameras and then you have the storage worked out, then it's up to the municipalities to figure out how to keep paying for it, because as you know, storage. So, but there's still a lot of details that haven't come out from the state about this grant, but they keep talking about it, so I know it's not going away yet.
The camera grant itself has actually been in place for several years now, at least 4 or 5 years, and historically it's been very reliable, very easy to apply for, very easy to do the reporting and get the money, and then but this change, the Safety Act did change. That's one of the provisions of the Safety Act that did go into effect, was the change to the camera grant to allow for it to be used for storage. It's just, we have no idea how that's going to look yet. So the money will be there. I am confident in that. I just don't know how that part of the piece of it's going to look. And this is the cost for this $43,100. That would be what they call a capital expenditure plan, which would be we actually purchase the cameras and then pay for the storage on the back end. There's also like a subscription based model, but it actually ends up being significantly more for the subscription based model. I haven't completely researched this is a budget number. So before we would make a decision on cameras, we would be vetting out with at least probably 3 vendors and, really drilling down on exactly what we're getting. But that's why, I mean, that number is based on a quote that I received from the vendor that we currently use for dash cameras. But that number could change, and depending on how we decide to move forward. I know, I just talked to the chief from Pingree today, and they did a capital expenditure plan for theirs, but it worked out best for them, where they physically bought the cameras up front.
There's also been talk at the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and some of these other councils of government, and maybe doing a group buy or trying to figure out a way to do a group buy of cameras, get together with large groups of municipalities and approach one vendor or multiple vendors and say, hey, this is what we want to do. But there's not been a whole lot of movement on that either. But the city of Chicago actually volunteered, because whatever company they used for their body cameras, they're the largest customer, period. And they're a part of the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. And so they were trying to get with all the other towns in Northern Illinois and come up with some kind of group buy too, because we're all impacted by the same mandate. So working on that. Does anyone else have any questions about the technology plan or the Hampshire Police Department or the new baseball hat that Chief Ham wore in?
I'm glad you like it. Josh likes it too.
I do like it.
He wants one, I'm sure.
Those available as village, what do they call that?
Swag.
Swag.
Flag.
I don't know, it might not
Looks like
go
a badge to me.
it might not go with your investment fund.
There you go.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I would like to entertain a motion to authorize the purchase of laptop and other police vehicle equipment in the amount of $47,722.
So moved.
Questions, comments, concerns? Ms. Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Paulson.
Aye.
Mr. Mott.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Fodor. Mr. Robinson.
Aye.
Motion passed by ayes, 1 absent.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, with that, we would ask your consideration of a motion to approve a professional services agreement with EEI in the amount of $34,962 for preliminary engineering requirement for the Safe Routes to School project. I just want to reflect for 30 seconds if I'm going to hand this over to Josh. It was in September of 21 that we worked with all the principals, the school teachers, the residents, everybody really pulled together to get a lot of support for this grant. We applied for the Safe Routes to School grant in previous years and not been successful, but we really had a great team effort among all the residents and everybody, and the parents and everybody in the schools. It was in May of 22 that the grant was announced, and here we are now, nearly a year later. But I'm going to let Josh share with you the route, which is on the board, and talk a little bit about this contract.
Yes, so EEI did the concept and helped on the grant applications, including preparing this simple map, shows the routes. that don't have sidewalks or need sidewalk reconstruction in the vicinity of Hampshire Middle School, Hampshire Elementary School. So the total project is $250,000 of grant funding plus about $126,000 of local match to include all of the engineering. The max grant was $250K, so we've received the max grant, and now we're ready to start spending the local match portion, basically, since engineering has to be paid for by local funds mostly. So the $35,000 is the preliminary engineering and grant. I don't want to say not grant application preparation, but the additional design work that has to be done before IDOT will actually release the money to us. So we're ready to start that now. EEI has prepared a professional services agreement for that first phase. And Tim Paulson is on the line if you have any specific questions about the agreement. Just a little note about the history of the route. It's the same route that was applied for in 2019. When we were applying for it in 2021, we were on a little bit of a short deadline. But it was still a good route. EEI still recommended it for all the sidewalk needs. Dave Starr still recommended it. So we kept the same route to mitigate some of the additional costs and time it would have taken to prepare otherwise. This is a grant that the village can apply for again in the future. It comes out every 2 years, I think. So if there's other sidewalks that you know of in the future, they can be considered for future grants.
So we have, if I could just add real quickly, Mr. Mayor, is that we do have a sidewalk replacement program. As you know, we did help that up in the current fiscal year because we reduced the match amount, but we had more people apply. We have not. So Lori and I talked about this today. We're going to cut roughly $25,000 out of the general fund budget for sidewalk replacement. And this will be our primary sidewalk program. We'll have $5,000 left. We need to cut somewhere else in order to have the local match.
This route was just designed years ago with the thought process that it connects like the Kennedy Home subdivision and like where the Park District is. There's no method for, at the current time, for walking field trips that happen quite often in the middle, in the elementary school and in Park District programs, especially over the summer, to walk from like the elementary school or some of the parks up to the Park District. And now it provides it looks like in this route, everybody on this side of town can at least find a path to get to the other side of town on a sidewalk. That was the whole method of it. So that's how this route was designed.
Are we, I can't remember the original plan. Are we putting on sidewalks on both sides of Panama?
I thought it was north and south. I thought it was just the one side, right?
Tim, do you know the answer to that? Is it both sides of these streets or just one side?
It's just going to be one side, yes.
Okay.
This contract does not include the land acquisition and that. So are we looking at having to compensate every single owner on this whole route for part of the land?
Maybe Tim can answer this too, but I believe we have enough right of way on either side of the street in order to install sidewalks, and we won't have to be doing much land acquisition at all. Is that right, Tim?
That's correct. Based on the preliminary look we took at this one, setting up the route, we do believe that we'll have everything within the right of way and not have to acquire any property.
Okay. So
But this process, this phase one engineering, is where we confirm all that.
okay.
So just a couple of questions, and maybe they're for Mr. Paulson. You just said this phase one engineering. Are there additional engineering costs expected post this phase?
Yes.
Yes. So in the IDOT world, there's 3 phases to engineering. Phase one engineering is is the most extensive in IDOT, doing a lot of the preliminary engineering plus all the environmental sign-offs that are required. And then phase two engineering is the design engineering, where construction plans and documents are prepared. And then phase 3 is the construction engineering.
Okay, thank you. The second question I have of the 3, can you explain what is being subcontracted to Huff and Huff as a part of this agreement?
Some of the environmental work for the environmental site assessment that is required.
And is that just you normally sub that type of work out?
Yes, we always sub that type of work out.
And then last question I have is on attachment E, the estimated project schedule. You have this project, the preliminary engineering going from March of 2023 to February of 2024. It seems like an awfully long time for just the engineering phase of this project.
That is, it is a long time, and it is primarily driven by factors within, the IDOT process. So this is, we do quite a few of these projects. It's a realistic schedule, but it does take quite a bit of time and coordination to get through the process with IDOT. And you can also, as the project development report is going from preliminary to final and getting finished, you can start phase 2 engineering if you have, enough of a sense from IDOT that there aren't going to be any, hiccups with the remainder of the way. And then on the overall schedule with this schedule, starting now, we would be looking at construction of the sidewalk then in late summer or fall of 2024.
Yeah, so I guess I asked, the reason I asked is when I look at the total hours estimated under the EEI and add in the total hours of the subcontractor, and then look at the timeline for this, and I understand there's some waits for approvals. It comes out to about 18 to 20, somewhere between 18 to 20 hours per month on this project, which just seems as though is it taking 12 months because of approval waiting, or it just seems like less than 20 hours a month towards this project is why it's taking 12 months, if that makes sense.
It's taking because of the, all the phases that are involved in the approval process. There's a lot of waiting, so it's not going to be, it's not going to be 18 to 20 hours a month. There's going to be a lot of activity at the beginning, and then there's going to be a lot of waiting, and then, other windows of activity and other windows of waiting.
Tim, can you give us just one example? For example, when you submit the preliminary engineering to IDOT, how long might it take them to get back to you?
It'll generally take, 60 to 120 days.
Those are the kind of waiting, and we have three waiting periods like that.
That's if we're lucky.
Yeah.
Wow.
And even at the beginning, you see, the coordination, we have to set up a meeting with the Federal Highway Authority and IDOT and the village for the official kickoff meeting. And, just coordinating and getting that set, will take at least a month generally from, past experience.
And because I'm not in construction, so please pardon the ignorant questions. We're involving the Federal Highway Authority and IDOT on local street sidewalks because it's a grant, or?
Correct. Yes.
Costs a lot more money, a lot more to spend grant money than it does our own money.
If I could ask then, so this first phase then is 35,000 for this contract that we're doing. And then what are the other two approximately? I mean, about the same amount. You said this one was the most work in it, setting it up.
It's the longest time frame. Yeah. So I would say, just as a, rough estimate of, it's about the same, about 30,000 for each of the other two phases.
30,000 each, or 30?
Yes, each. So there wouldn't be a need for the a subconsultant for environmental after the first phase.
So out of the 130, whatever our portion is, a little over 90K is just for engineering.
Correct.
And as and a lot of that is to get through the process required for the, to leverage the grant money.
And if we don't pay for the engineers, then we can't spend the money.
And if we don't, and trustee Kelly, it's not so much just engineering work, it's all the other work that goes along with the grant requirements, both federal and state requirements. It's a very.
Well, it's an engineering fee is what I mean.
Yes.
And so engineering fees account for almost 25% of the total project cost.
But that's typical on anything that we do. It's about 25% goes to the engineering.
Certainly for a grant like this. You'll see the same thing when we come back on the Park and Rent FEMA grant. So
it's frustrating from my perspective. It's frustrating because it's 250, 350, $400,000 for sidewalks. On just a couple streets in the village. It just seems, and I understand it's grants and working with all the governments, it's just, so much money and it's piecemealing and it's kind of nauseating to watch. And that's not anybody's fault in this room, it just is government. But I did notice too that on, I guess it's page 79 of our packet, the hazardous conditions. And I made a comment there about lead pipes, because if there's something hazardous in the ground, then everything stops. And that's one thing that we know that we're working on with the lead pipe issues. So I didn't know if a lead pipe would be enough to be a hazardous condition to start the project.
In this case, the lead pipe program for the, the water mains, we're going to be dealing in the top, a disturbance of the top, 1 foot of the soil with the sidewalk. So we will not be getting into any interaction with any water services or potential, lead water services with this project.
Do you do borings or anything to find out about contamination, or is that part of all this? I'm just curious. I don't want you to.
It could be, it could be if something, for the environmental assessment, they do it's a lot of, paperwork or research on databases. And if something is triggered in one of the databases, this is mostly residential, it's unlikely, but if you were going past the gas station, say, it might trigger that they're in the, underground storage tank database. And then you might have to do more, more detailed investigation and possibly testing if something gets triggered along the way.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Yes, sorry. Is it possible that the sidewalk construction may change the water drainage flooding issues that we're seeing on Panama? Or are we going to move it to a different side of the street? I know it's been an ongoing issue for years. I just don't know. I'm assuming as part of the engineering is figuring out how do we direct the water with this?
Yeah, that'll be part of what we're looking at, the drainage, and we're going to be working to keep things, at existing grades. So we're not changing the pattern of drainage. And certainly not blocking, if there's a flow that comes from the rear yards out to to a side yard and into a street at a certain point, then, as we construct the sidewalk through there, we'll make sure the water still has access to that path.
We do not have plans to do anything about mitigating that flood at Panama. Do you want funding?
Yeah, so that was the question. Yes, this won't address any of the drainage, further address any of the drainage concerns, but it won't make anything worse.
Okay. Will it also look at if there is significant water during the cold season, will the sidewalk be passable? Because flooding issues and ice, that kind of negates the purpose of putting in a sidewalk if they can't skate to school.
Yeah, the grades of the sidewalk are part of the design process. So we'll be grading it to the IDOT standard. So we will have to put a cross slope on the sidewalk to comply with their standards, both a minimum cross slope and a maximum cross slope to comply with or not exceed a maximum slopes to comply with ADA requirements.
Any other thoughts? Thanks for talking to us so much tonight, Mr.
Yeah.
Paulson. Holy moly, that's the most you've talked in a long time.
I'm happy to anytime.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve a professional services agreement with EEI in the amount of $34,962.
Second.
Questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I will ask the clerk. Please call the roll.
Mr. Mott.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Fodor.
Aye.
Mr. Robinson.
Aye.
Ms. Palastrellini. Aye. Motion passed 5 ayes, 1 absent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that, we would ask your consideration of an ordinance amending the alcoholic liquor regulations to.
Well, you're backwards.
Wrong one? ordinance amending police regulations to modify provisions governing parking during and after certain snow events like today. I think you all received an email from me about a week ago that we discovered, Chief Pan discovered that our ordinances were not really in sync with each other, having to do with the snowfall, so we're cleaning that up tonight. So we just ask for consideration of this.
Chief Ann,
Well,
I can't read, so.
Okay.
We discussed that, because he sent the email and blind copied the board, and I was like, hey, I think the board should see this, and he
Yeah.
copied me right back, replied back, said, it said on the bottom that we sent it to the board.
A little further down than this.
So, yeah.
you want me to explain it, or?
Does this warrant explanation, or did it make sense in the agenda someone?
Total sense to me.
Okay, all right,
Thank you.
hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve ordinance 2301, first ordinance of this year, amending the police regulations to modify provisions governing the parking during and after snow events.
So
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns?
can I ask how this affects State Street during a snow event? Like, for example, right now, if it stops snowing now,
We're all gonna get tickets,
well,
so we're not gonna.
no, well, essentially, yes, but like, say I'm eating at Copper Barrel and it stops snowing, do I have to leave and go move my car, or State Street's good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think designated parking, because, I mean, if you were parking on State Street, but you're not, you're parking in designated parking,
In designated parking.
which isn't really, yeah. I mean, it's
But I
not,
do know they plow curb to curb, so.
right.
But they typically would have to do that after business is closed. I mean, that's why we don't, I mean, there's signs all over that says, I think it's 11 o'clock or something, or 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is. I don't know, I have kids, so I don't get to go out and party anymore, so I'm gonna party by 9.
1 to 6.
Yeah, the overnight,
On
yeah.
State Street,
Yeah.
1 to 6.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I was gonna say on page 105 of our packet, section 2-2-57. At the very last line, I would propose an amendment that we change the word "and" snowmobiles to "except" snowmobiles. Because when we're making an exception and then add the word "and," it sounds like you're adding it back in. So we want snowmobiles to be allowed, is my understanding. Yeah.
Not in the street, no. Not parking in the street.
Okay, so then it should be "or." Because if you're making a negative list, it should be or blah.
I'm not gonna get involved with grammar. I'm good with an
Yeah,
or.
trustee Flutter shared that with me, and I agree with her. It's a little confusing the way it reads now, and it would be clear.
So we have a first and a second, right? So now we're gonna, no, I understand, right?
I have another question before we move out of the question and comment section.
No, I'm not looking to weave out of it. I'm asking for clarification.
She's proposing an amendment.
Right, so, but we have a first and a second, so we need to withdraw the motion.
Well, you can discuss the amendment. She still has the amendment on the floor.
Okay.
Right.
That's why I have a parliamentary procedure question, that's all. So what's your question as long as we're
No, we
going?
need to finish this before.
So we have the amended, so
Is there discussion on the amendment?
I don't believe there is.
I support it.
Everybody's good with it. So I think that we need to amend the motion, so I guess I'll have a motion to amend to accept the amended motion.
Well, it could be a friendly amendment, and therefore the person who made the motion would accept.
I can accept.
All right.
We're good.
When we get really deep into this Robert Rules
Sorry.
stuff, I get
You're
lost.
good at it over here, though. Well,
Okay, all right, so we've got a friendly amendment. Now, Mr. Kelly, sorry.
So just for the clarity, if anybody comes back and watches this and is reading the new ordinance and the changes, it's stating that because it crosses out all of 2-7-1 and it now just states that it's unlawful for the vehicles listed to be parked after accumulation of 2 inches or more. So if it's during the middle of the day and a snowstorm is hitting and it is still continuing to snow, and we have hit the 2-inch mark, am I going out and moving my vehicle because we've hit 2 inches and I need to pay attention when it hits 2 inches? Or is it at the end of the snowfall, if it's over 2 inches, I need to move it? How does that ordinance read?
It's one for you, Mark.
I would read this ordinance to say that at the point it's more than 2 inches, you go out and move your car.
Okay, so residents will have to make sure that they're following that it is hit 2 inches or more. Now they may be ticketed if they don't go move their
That's
car.
a pretty common thing. It's hard to.
I just want us to be, I want us to be crystal clear on this, because when I read this, I didn't know if that's once the snowfall stops and we've had more than 2 inches. If it's continuing to be a bad snowfall and it's over 2 at that point.
The 2 inches is supposed to be, that's when the plows come out, but frankly, as you know, we're out way before that.
Well, and sometimes if it's a continuous snow, the plows will wait until the snow has died down a little bit. Otherwise, it just negates what they're plowing, right? And so that's why I'm asking that. I'm not trying to be a pain. I just want to make sure that we're really clear.
I think the intent is when it's 2 inches or more, think of the flip side. The great snowfall of 67, when it was 27 inches, the plows are not going to wait till it's all over and there's 27 inches on the ground and they go out and plow. So the point is, when there's that much snow, the streets need to be cleared. The plows need to have access and not be obstructed by vehicles parked.
Thank you for the clarification.
So we have a first and a second, and a friendly amendment.
But did the second agree to the amendment as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I ask, what would be the better word there as far as legal?
Where again was the
It's
proposal?
section 2-2-57. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's in the last line, it should read or snow, or except, what is it? You say it was your,
Oh,
or snowmobiles or
Yeah.
except snowmobiles?
We're trying to figure out if snowmobiles are supposed to be
Let's get it in the
included.
right paragraph.
Or not.
You there, Mark?
I am,
We still can't tell.
I think you're correct that it should be clear.
Well, but if it says except devices moved by human power, comma, devices used exclusively upon stationary rails or tracks. If you're including snowmobiles as your third thing,
That's the
then
way
that
it's-
means that they
that's the way
are
it's written.
allowed.
That's the way it's
So are
intended
they-
to be written.
But I asked if they were supposed to be included earlier, and I thought somebody
No.
said they were
No, they're
not.
not supposed to be included.
So
there's 3 exceptions.
the snowmobiles would be the third exception.
That's
That's
How
how
it's- that's how it's
written. So
Is
put
that
It would
what
also
we
still be an
intend?
exception if you put or in there, correct?
Yeah, so that's why I'm
I think
trying to
or
figure
would be
out.
a little more clear is my only,
But in the
was your point that I agree with.
But in the Snowmobile Registration Act or snowmobiles, like, I'm not a pro with the Snowmobile Registration Act, but I do know that you are not supposed to be driving on a vehicle or driving or parked on a roadway, period, unless you're going or coming from a trail, period.
It's supposed to be moving, not stationary.
Correct.
right.
Unless
You can
you're,
cross a road.
Yeah.
You can be 10 feet off of a road. And there might be one more.
so I would,
And
because
it's on the roadway.
I'm checking. I believe that the language that I've quoted to you is directly taken from the Illinois Vehicle Code.
Okay,
So,
Because we've gone through this with snowmobiles in the village in the past, and so we typically defer any type of snowmobile language or ruling to how the state defines what snowmobiles are allowed to do, because they're covered at the state
Yeah.
DNR.
So a snowmobile can come off the trail, be parked in a municipal lot to go in to have,
Well, I don't even think that they could be parked in our lots.
so where do they park?
They don't, they're not
They shouldn't
supposed
be
to.
driving around down
They
there.
drive into-
We don't have a snowmobile parking area downtown. We've gotten into
I mean, you can't
that.
even get downtown with a snowmobile unless you drive through people's front yards.
Right, and so you can ride on the side of the roadway, you can ride on the side of the roadway, coming and going to your house. You theoretically, I mean, people used to park in the right of way for the railroad, but we took that away from them. Because we have parking spots there, and now you can't park a snowmobile in a parking spot.
Right.
So I don't know where they park when they come downtown, because I don't think that there's a place for them to be parked, because we don't allow them in our public lots. Because the skags and the picks on their track will tear up our asphalt.
They shouldn't be able to get downtown because they can't drive on the road.
Well, they can drive, they're not, because they're specifically not allowed on State Street. As if I recall right, in our ordinance for the snowmobiles, we don't allow them on State Street. They can go around on the
How
side
else
of,
would they get? cross states.
They can cross, but they can cross.
You said they could drive downtown. How could they get downtown otherwise?
Well, if you're,
Without going to everybody's yards.
they can ride on the side of the road. It's in our ordinance.
On the side of the road, meaning in the road?
Yeah, correct. It's in our ordinance. It's been that way for years. So if I, like, as an example, if I wanted to take my snowmobile and ride out to the trail that crosses, that is along State Street through Karen Traska's property, I would be able to ride up Prairie View and, up Prairie View and Terwilliger on the side of the roadway. And I could cross State Street if I went up Prairie and Rin and all that stuff to cross, but then just to get to the trail. But theoretically, there's really no good way for me to get to the trail from Mill Street either.
You have to ride on State Street
To get there. So if I wanted to ride on the trail system, I need to put it on a trailer or find somewhere else some other way to get there.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of convoluted, but that's our.
I
Right,
did.
okay.
So to get back to
Thank you.
the definition of vehicle in the Illinois Vehicle Code
Mhm.
is except devices moved by human power, devices used exclusively upon stationary rails or tracks, and snowmobiles as defined in the Snowmobile Registration and Safety Act.
So,
Now, I'm not saying that the state of Illinois gets the grammar correct.
no, I'm just trying to figure out, is a snowmobile
Uh,
a vehicle in this ordinance? That's what I'm trying to figure out, because it's not clear still, after all this discussion.
If I could, trustee Fluor.
Yes,
271A states motor vehicles, other vehicles, or snowmobiles. So regardless of whether it's a vehicle, snowmobiles will not be allowed to be parked on the street after a 2-inch snowfall.
okay, so may I ask if there's a reason why we would add that line? Because I'm assuming underlined sections are additions, correct?
Which line, the line that
The-
snowmobile?
Yes, the one that complicates the,
I just,
is it just because that's?
my
what
intent was that the village definitions should match the state
Match the state,
definitions.
okay.
We've seen some discrepancies in other
Okay,
instances, and that's what the definition is in this state law.
okay,
So legally, there's no confusion here with how it's written. Or should it be?
I'm not confused,
Okay.
but I don't promise.
You're the only one that doesn't need to be confused. We can be
Okay.
confused, but you got it.
I've
We're
been
good.
prosecuted.
All right.
okay, because I just don't want people to come back later and be upset with our officers if they're ticketed because they read it one way and it's meant a
Actually,
different way, and that's, I just want to avoid that confusion.
You
In
can never
future.
stop, but someone might.
Well,
I don't know,
right,
I don't know if I want to, I don't know if this
Right.
clarifies or confuses.
It
but under-
confuses, I can tell you.
But under the village ordinance 273 for snowmobile operation, it says that snowmobiles shall not be parked or left unattended anywhere in the village limits except on private property.
So no Raspberry pancakes.
So one to ask, because I don't believe it's something that goes into the ordinance, I guess the question. Since it states on 271B that the accumulation of snowfall in the village shall be determined by the street supervisor or his or her designee, or in their absence, maybe change his to theirs since we do his or her before it. I'm not really stuck on that one. I'm just saying that we do that before. By the chief of police or his or her designee. Makes total sense to me. Can we operationally, as just through whatever the standard operating procedures that you have, Mr. Hedges, state that when that determination has been made, a notification push be sent out to the Hampshire app to notify residents that there is now determined to be 2 inches of snowfall in the village?
That could be done, but that's not the policy of the app.
What do you
The
mean?
policy is emergencies. So right now, the policy that we shared with the PR committee and one that you all agreed with so far was that we would only push out emergencies or
Something for consideration. For
but
the
it's
PR
certainly something
committee.
that could be done, yes. And I
Because that is something that could affect all residents, that you may now be ticketed if your vehicle is in the lot. It's not an advertisement of an event, it's not, come join us.
I think it's a great idea. It's just a little bit
Yeah, and
inconsistent.
it doesn't go into the ordinance, that's why I just,
Yeah. I think
before
we
it
should,
passed.
I think we should talk about the PR committee and I think that's a good idea.
Add to the agenda.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so are you withdrawing your
I
friendly
am
motion?
withdrawing my friendly.
Okay, now you need
Second.
somebody second. Who seconded? Did you second it?
No.
You
No,
don't.
but the original move-in was willing to accept the amendment, but now we're gonna withdraw that and go back to the original
Go back to
motion.
the original motion because we are maintaining the state regulation.
So no more friendly.
So now you're not being friendly.
Now
anymore.
friendly.
No, I'm unfriendly withdrawing.
All right. Okay, so we're back to the
It was Eric
original.
that had to be friendly.
Right.
So, okay, so we're back to the original motion, which is approving what's in front of us.
Correct.
Does anybody have any issues with that? Because I have a first and a second. I think I remember it.
Yes.
Ms. Clerk, can you call the roll, please, before it changes?
Ms. Fodor,
Hi.
Mr. Kelly,
Aye.
Mr. Matt,
Aye.
Ms. Paulson,
Hi.
Mr. Robinson.
Aye.
Motion passed 5-1 absent.
Okay, Mr. Hedges.
Now we would like your consideration of an ordinance amending the alcoholic liquor regulations to align requirements from product sampling and tastings with state law. Blocks would like to start doing free sampling of their growing liquor options over there, liquor department. And they contacted us, and it turns out that our ordinance prohibits it, but state law permits it. So they can do it now. They don't need our permission, but we want to clean up our ordinance so that it matches state law to the point Mr. Schuster made earlier. That's it.
This is really just a cleanup. This is just aligning it with what the state liquor code already allows.
And it will inform your local license holders what the rules are.
Right.
And this mirrors the state?
Pardon me?
This mirrors the state, the way it's written?
Yes,
And
no, it copies it exactly.
copies it exactly, okay.
You can tell by the grammar.
On page 2 of it, it's, tasting must be done by a licensee and or registered tasting representative.
Yes,
One, my question was, what is that? And 2, is that something that Blocks is gonna have on staff, or is it somebody that comes in?
no, that's somebody that would come in, and it's, you register with the state.
Okay.
If you are a liquor salesman, in fact, and then you can come and to the site and, you know, Jameson's Irish whiskey is on special today, have a taste.
Okay, so it's not Blocks personnel that are gonna be doing it?
No.
Generally, no.
Okay, that's,
Like, you
It's a distributor.
Represents to like vineyards and
Yeah,
then they
that's-
do blocks and then they do somewhere else.
Yeah.
It'd be a distributor representative.
okay,
Tuscan Sun does a lot of that.
okay.
And do they bring in a representative?
Yeah. Although Tuscan Sun has an A1 license, so they can actually pour themselves.
Oh, right. Okay, so this is a dumb question with questions points.
No such thing, but yes, that's a dumb question.
I was in a supermarket in Algonquin,
How dare you?
I know, last weekend, and they were giving beer, it was a beer tasting. I believe the person that was handling the tasting was an employee of the store. Is that so can an employee of the store be your,
Yes.
If they have the proper Bassett training.
if proper, okay,
Well, under this proposal, then it would be required to have Bassett training.
That mirrors the state,
Play that
correct?
role. I don't know what Algonquin requires.
But this mirrors the state, and the Bassett section is in the state code.
Isn't,
The state has two different types of Bassett trainings, and if you're gonna serve on premises, you have to have the on premises Bassett training.
Bassett training.
so regardless of where I was, it would still have to follow the state's ordinance, which
Yes.
is this. Okay.
There are some grocery stores that actually serve food there and liquor.
Right.
Kudos, not in the area here, and I don't think it's you can sit down and have a drink with a glass of wine with us, pasta.
But that's not a tasting event.
Right,
That's something
but
different.
but because they're allowed to pour it there then, kind of,
I think that's a,
because that's
that's a different
what you
thing.
just said about Tuscan Sun, they can
They
pour.
have a
But they
different.
have
A1 license.
They have an A1 license.
They have taps there, and they can pour their own. It's a different type of liquor license.
It's like a bar.
They have a full
Yeah,
bar
it's not,
license.
well, and that's the same thing that I would describe for this grocery store,
No,
Well, Mariano's, yeah, if they're pouring wine,
that's what I mean.
but that's a different,
it's a different liquor.
that's not what he wants to do at Blocks. He wants to have a,
Yeah, he just has
Oh,
packaged
yeah,
area.
no, I know that, I was
So you
responding
can
to your
taste beer.
Algonquin thing.
right,
That's-
okay.
But I know.
No, that's what happened in Algonquin is this is what he wants to do. He's just pouring a little cup of beer, 2 ounces, and for you to taste. So I wanted to make sure that he could be the one doing that if he's properly batched.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson, for stalling enough for the clerk to come back. Any other questions?
Not on this.
All right, I will entertain a motion to approve ordinance 23-02, an ordinance amending the alcoholic liquor regulations to align requirements for product sampling and tastings with state law. So,
Second.
questions, comments, concerns? Ms. Clerk?
Mr. Robinson,
Aye.
Ms. Palastrellini.
Aye.
Vermont,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Aye.
Ms. Fodor. Yes, 5-1 absent.
For those that don't know, that was Mr. Frillman. He's on our planning and zoning commission and he had to sign a plat. So that's why he came in tonight, because he knew we'd all be here. So that's why the clerk got special dispensation to run away in the middle of a meeting,
He
even
came
though she
yesterday.
didn't ask.
You know what, the clerk duties, so here, there.
I silently made a motion. And seconded it.
And she was friendly about it.
Yes.
It's right.
Okay, now it's time for everybody's favorite part of the meeting, monthly staff reports. Before you have the December streets report, the engineering report, in case you want to hear Mr. Paulson again, and the police report. Please review them and let's have some questions.
I've been for the chief, on page 120 of the packet, the Group A offensive report. I went down to motor vehicle theft and it lists 0 for reported in 2022. And I thought we had 2 or 3.
So that column is year to date. So in January of 2022, there were no.
Oh, so it was just reported. It's not 2022 didn't happen.
It's not the whole year. It's just, those first 2 columns are just January. So it's
Okay,
January 2023 and then January 2022.
okay. I'm glad we haven't had it.
Only January.
January's pretty quiet.
January.
Anything for the engineering report or streets report? Fantastic.
I actually have, I'd like to talk a little bit more.
No, please,
If I could.
please, we haven't heard you enough tonight.
I know. So I want to show you something actually, because, so these reports that you're looking at is something that I added a couple when I came and I haven't, but it's really pretty much just reports that are clean reports out of our reporting system. There are some formatting issues and sometimes it doesn't just really give you the analytical data or, month-to-month comparisons that you're looking for. And so what I'd like to do is start giving you a report that's a little bit more streamlined. If I could pull this up here, I want to share this. Now, the data on this, when I get this up, sorry, I gotta share my screen. Okay. I have printed out copies if you want to take a close look at this, but really this is just intended to be as a sample example. There's no data in it, but what I'd like to do starting in February, and I'll fill this out. That's why it says February 2023, because that'll actually be for this month in March. But I created a scorecard, and so instead of looking at these just lists of numbers and all that, I want to know what this tells you what I think is important for me to report to you and for us to look at tracking from month to month. I have these at home. So I'll just hand these out. I'll just take a few minutes on this.
This one's supposed to be in blue.
Yeah, they actually, it is blue.
That's why they want
Don't want a new printer, be careful.
Yeah, I know, yeah. No.
He's getting one.
There you go. This is for Toby.
They're gonna be little.
We'll just get little pieces of paper.
So basically, instead of having just your list of numbers and everything, I want to know what's important to you. So if you look at the scorecard, I put some things down there that I thought that I would like to report to you, but I also want to know if there's other things that you're interested in. So there's the Group A offenses. Instead of looking at all the individual offenses, you've got, how many Group A offenses we had, which are the numbers that are reported to the state and the federal government. And we can look at the change from month to month. And then we can look back at the years before, during that same amount of time. We can look at cost for service, burglary, you can see the list there of the things that I think are important. And the same thing under activity, traffic stops, traffic tickets, field interviews, and parking tickets. I don't have a good way right now to report, to separate out self-initiated calls for service, so that would be a good measure of the officers of how much they're doing when they're not committed to calls. But these are measures of things that are self-initiated, that I can track easily and report to you. So that's the scorecard. And if you look at that and you don't want to know about things on there, or if you want me to add something, I'll add something. It really doesn't. I want to keep it as specific as possible, but also as general. I mean, if there's more general things that you want to see and track, then we can start doing that. But I'd like to start looking at this monthly change, and instead of getting bogged down in the detail of all the individual offenses, just kind of look at the big picture. I mean, I can still provide those lists, and then I just have a couple blank slides here. This is what I would intend to put here would be a line graph of the Group A offenses. This is that last year's call for service. I think that's a useful slide to look at the last 5 years compared to the current year. And then I wanted to also include some slides on, current projects. What are we working on right now with the police department? What have we finished? What goals have we accomplished? And then, are there any specific events that happened that month that the officers were involved with that I'd like to highlight? And then if something significant happens along the way, I can always add in a slide, but I just want to kind of have a standard presentation that I put together that doesn't get bogged down in the detail and just gives the overall view, but also gives you where you can see the change that's taking place from month to month.
Can you talk about the last thing you have listed for the current project?
Oh, yes. So
Professional side report.
yeah, well, actually, there's two. I want to talk about two things. First of all, next board meeting, we're gonna do promotions. So on March 2nd, we're going to promote Sergeant Neblock. Jim Neblock is gonna be promoted to lieutenant, and then Officer Cody Grinley is gonna be promoted to sergeant on March 2nd, the next time we're here. And then so the flagpole, the Eagle Scout, Evan Adams has been working on for the last couple months, all completely donated material and time from several different businesses in Hampshire. So actually some from outside of Hampshire, but they came, they did every step of it along the way. They erected a very nice flagpole for us. It's got lighting that was donated by our landlord. And we're going to do an official, there's no flag on the pole yet, because I wanted to do an official flag raising ceremony and give the Boy Scouts an opportunity to do that. So on February 20th, you're all invited to come if you're available. At 1 p.m. we're going to do a flag raising. So I'm hoping to get a lot of people there. I have no idea how many are going to come, but we'll put something on Facebook and try to get some people there. Maybe on an app. I guess I can't do a push, can I? Nope.
What time did you say?
It's 1 o'clock. Yeah.
Isn't he gonna be in school? Oh, it's a holiday.
Monday's a holiday.
Okay. The rest of us.
So
Some of us won't be.
Okay.
he did a really nice job, and there's mulch and they made the cement pad big enough. His idea was that we're gonna do flag retirement ceremonies there too occasionally, so people can bring the flags to the police department and then they'll do a ceremony where they burn them. So it'll be a real nice thing. So yeah.
Any questions for Chief Van?
I like your idea for your report.
Okay.
Trust your professional judgment with that. Thank you for that.
Okay, and if there's anything that any of you'd like to add, just send me an email and I'll get it in there. I'm trying to unshare my screen. Can you unshare me?
I got you.
Okay.
Okay, next is the regular accounts payable. I thought about messing with Trustee Kelly again, just skipping it like I did last meeting. But I figured he'd be on to me. Please look over the regular accounts payable at this time. Are there any questions to be had? I'm already disappointed.
Mr. Hedges, can you remind me our neighboring or fellow governmental agencies submit requests for impact fees or transition fees?
Okay.
Well, no, I mean, we make them, or we ask them to submit in writing or present when they want one of the two, but I.
Impact.
Impact fees, okay.
Transition fees, they just get paid out
Yep, okay.
regularly.
Page 141,
Oh, thank God.
just to make him happy.
Oh,
One- 141 the page, and then PAN, PAAN, Pace Analytical Services, sample pickup fee. I know it was a small amount, but about a sample pickup fee.
That's it's water analysis that they're doing on the drinking water.
Okay.
is that the one where you have to wait so many hours, pour it into a jar, and then you send it out? Is that?
No, this is a little different.
Okay.
Those are resident tests. These
All right.
these were laboratory tests done,
Fantastic.
here.
My other one, just to make
Oh,
President
sure.
Reed happy,
I'm sure.
is on page 145, the Trees Unlimited, a downtown cleanup for $2,700.
So, when we have snowfalls in excess of 2 inches, we have assistants getting the downtown cleaned up. They bring in their loader and, scrape the downtown and get it off to the side on Rin.
Okay, so it's not tree work. It's-
No.
That's what I thought. What are we doing with trees?
And it's not
Okay.
sidewalks, just so nobody gets.
Okay, all right.
It's given too much time. Page 137. Hampshire Park District refund overpayment on utilities.
So the Park District building on South Avenue has a water meter that's in I'll call it some kind of manhole structure along the side of their parking lot. And unfortunately, like literally, the water operator has to lay down on their stomach, open the trap door, lay down on their stomach with a flashlight, peer down in there and read the meter. So it was read incorrectly and we overcharged based on the reading that was given to us. We went back and reread the meter. We were able to follow along the meter readings, determine that it was incorrect and refunded the excess that was charged to them.
Mr. Reddit by $4,000.
It's a number on a meter.
Well, that I get.
Yeah,
It's a lot of water.
It was.
it was a lot of water.
It's not like a small difference. Why are I thought everyone in the village moved to the remote metering.
Yeah, so again, this thing is in a manhole structure, subject to flooding. We are going to change the meter out. It's an old school meter that has like the dials on it versus the electronic display. We are going to change it out for an electronic display. And I'm not 100% sure. I recommended to, like Lori doesn't know anything about water, right, operations, but I recommended that they try and install the remote reader on that. It's a separate piece of equipment off of the water meter itself. I'm sure you have a MXU on the side of your home. But we're unsure whether or not it's gonna perform under these conditions where it gets potentially flooded. So we'll give it a whirl, but, we're trying to eliminate any manual processes in this. And so we're gonna give it a whirl,
Well,
but
that's what I was just thinking, is to have somebody have to lay down to take a reading every time,
So-
whether it's digital or regular.
yeah, it's horrible.
Completely understand,
Well, let me tell
it's,
you,
it's a tough thing to do, but do we have a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, let me re-ask the question. Do we have other commercial or governmental properties that have this type of meter that are not on the auto read?
so I think that this water meter was installed after the water service was put in, or otherwise it would be inside one of the buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was an afterthought, right? Maybe, I don't know.
The answer is, we don't have this problem in other commercial.
So this is the only commercial one,
Very unusual.
send somebody out to go do
And I don't think I've
an
ever,
in-person read.
I don't think I've ever heard of an over read like this before either. It's pretty unusual.
I totally understand, I'm not, and I wasn't meaning to be like, wow, I'm glad they're getting their money back for this. I just was wondering, like, it sounds like we have one property that we have to send somebody out to do these in-person reads, and that's not like Nothing that they're doing at other
So
places.
we're working through, there is something called the walking route. We have a walking route, and those are more of a manual process. Either a probe has to be attached or, like touches the thing that's on the outside of the building. There's a couple of those, I guess, and then there are some without MXUs that have to be manually read.
So we do
but we're-
have some others that require.
We are, yes,
Okay.
there are some others, but we're trying to get, like I said, take the manualness
Gotcha.
out of the process so
Okay.
that,
So I'm glad we're getting them back the funds.
sure. I
Okay,
don't think we would ever allow installation of that type of water meter ever again. We would not have a new installation in a pit. Not gonna happen.
Understood. Thank you.
Can I ask about the sidewalks?
sure.
On page 143? Not necessarily that we're paying for the sidewalk, but the sidewalk program. This was a $900 expense, and I think you said we're gonna keep 2,500 in the
Today we discussed keeping 5,000.
5,000. Okay,
So
so,
it's still too.
okay,
So
so,
I should say more than.
all right, so we're not foreseeing many of these.
No, if you remember before, I think that, what was it, 70-30 before, or 80-20 maybe? And now we went to 50-50, thinking we get more people, but it hasn't changed.
Okay. Okay,
We were actually gonna start just repairing sidewalks on our own.
Right.
Then the safe routes to school came along, so we're gonna use the money for that this year, and in the future, we'll.
oh, I totally understand that. It's like when you see a $900 one, that's ultimately 5 people that can participate in the program, and we kept $5,000. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? I will entertain a motion to approve the regular accounts payable to be paid on or before February 22nd, 2023, in the amount of $267,940.27.
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns? Last chance. Ms. Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Matt,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Aye.
Ms. Fodor,
Aye.
Mr. Robinson,
Aye.
Ms. Palastrellini.
Aye.
Motion passed 5, 1 absent.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, BDC.
BDC was scheduled to meet yesterday. We postponed the meeting for a date to be determined. It may be next week, but once we have that date, we'll make sure that the agenda is posted in time within 48 hours of that scheduled meeting. And at the next village board meeting, I will report what happens at the BDC meeting. Any questions? Yes.
Just a question, since we're preparing for the budget. Last we had kind of talked that it was going to go back to BDC to talk to the beautification committee, decide how we were going to allocate money. Again, if we were going to do the beautification grants and
You mean the street?
streets, yeah,
The facade grant.
the facade grant program. And so I was just curious if a new method of distributing it or running that program has been determined.
It has not been discussed. I mean, we didn't meet yesterday, so I can bring it up at our next meeting. It was not discussed in the meeting prior to that. It has been discussed that we were going to look at, should there be any revisions done? And I believe we were going to make an ask to continue the program in the next fiscal year. But I can take that back to the BDC next week and then report on it in the next village board meeting.
Okay, quick, because we've got our 2 budget.
Talked about continuing that program. It was never an issue of not having it in the budget number added.
And that, the second budget meeting will be after the BDC.
Okay, because it was a matter of how, and I know it's come up a couple of times of finding ways of doing it so adequately allow as many people as possible to participate, but to have that hard number.
Yeah, but that wouldn't change the number that's being requested. That's more of the operations of how do you determine or when does somebody apply for it. But I think the number that's being requested, at least Mr. Edgerton, unless I'm speaking, I don't think we ever discussed having less or more. It was just
No,
continuation of the program
there's a staff review going on now, so I think it will be important for the BDC
to discuss, like, do we want to request the same funding?
yes, because we did, went down 75,000 the year before and then back up to 100.
Say that again.
Okay. Yeah, I can bring that to the next.
Thank you.
Hearing water running behind us.
It's the boiler system draining.
Oh,
Oh,
thought maybe someone got water and I thought maybe I left a valve or something.
I don't think so.
Either that or
That's it on the BBC.
I have another idea.
Okay, public relations?
We met last Thursday and we discussed, the analytics for the app usage. We talked about our independent contractors and got an update on those and seeing how those were going. So far, so good. We are on track with most of our, what are you looking for?
So,
Yes, with most of our goals, at this time. Thanks, yeah, that was great. We, as usual, discussed events to communicate in our newsletter. In our news business, though, we did actually discuss the idea of pushing out different notifications, because I think there was a water issue within the last month that went out on Facebook, but there were lots of people who didn't know about it, and so that was something that we had discussed previously, and obviously we will discuss that again as far as pushing out notifications on urgent situations that may or may not constitute emergencies. So, yeah,
And trustee Kelly, our Facebook ad showed up on Facebook,
it did.
and I'm not really sure how. But
It just
Um,
did.
Mayor Reed noticed it, and thanked me for placing it, and I'm not really sure how I did it.
It looked really.
Did you see it?
Yeah. Well, I saw somebody had shared it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I did go back to our contractor, ask him again, so, but maybe you and I can find a few minutes to do a little Zoom call and go through that together next week.
Public Works?
I know he's not here, but I'd like to say they did a wonderful job with the snow on January 28th. And tonight they're doing a wonderful job plowing again, so thanks to those guys, they do awesome work.
I do have to say there is a big difference when you leave the village
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
boundaries versus when you're in the village limits, just the difference of the road conditions.
Just when you
They do a
leave
phenomenal job.
city streets and get on the Route 72.
It's something. You make that turn off of Allen Road and you're like, hey, look, pavement, what's
Yeah.
this?
They didn't brag about it in their report though, for their snowstorm on the 28th.
No.
They should rate great work.
Trustee Palastrellini?
Just preparing, I guess, getting ready for the budget. I'm trying to tap people if they haven't asked for money that want to be included, to please do so. Of course, our goal is not to spend money that we haven't allocated. So as much of it as we can get in, we can prepare for that. So
When's your next meeting?
next meeting is, the first meeting of the two is February 21st. So it's next Tuesday.
At what time?
6:30.
We didn't determine a time.
Okay, so yeah, 6 or 6:30, watch. But yeah, I encourage you to come just to kind of sit in. It's such a good meeting to kind of hear everything that's going on.
Well, are these working meetings of the whole?
Yes.
or-
They will be posted like that.
Can we have a 6 or 6:30, do you know for sure?
Doesn't,
It hasn't been set,
it hasn't been set, but
we just need to make some plans if we could.
we can just say 6 o'clock. Okay, is that fine for you?
That'd be great for us, sure.
All right, 6 PM,
21st.
21st, Tuesday.
Do we have any new business or other announcements? I have one. It's looking like we're gonna be taking the show on the road for our next board meeting, I'm thinking, right? Am I correct on that?
Probably.
So, by that I mean, so we all got emailed, the situation with the planning and zoning commission about the annexation, and there was a lot of people, and so they were over capacity. We had overflow set up at the fire department, but that was maxed out as well. There were some audio problems, and it is what it is. So we had to postpone the zoning meeting to the 27th at 7 o'clock, and that's going to be at Hampshire Middle School. Now, that's a board, a recommendation board, so if any of you guys choose to attend, don't say anything to anyone, because they're a recommendation board and you cannot be seen as influencing their decision. So I would encourage you to, if you are interested in what's going on, get the link from Mr. Hedges and attend remotely.
Sorry, there will not be a remote link.
Oh, that's true. That's true. That was we talked about this.
In person only.
On top of the bleachers.
Yeah, so again, don't you know, if you're gonna, I mean, I can't stop you from going, it's a public meeting, okay, but don't, again, that your words can be construed as influencing their decision, and they make recommendations to this board. You will have your time to make and deliberate when it comes to this board. But that being said, because of the capacity concerns at that meeting, most likely when that proposal, if that proposal comes to us in any form, there will be more than what this room can hold. So our next board meeting will more than most likely be at Hampshire Middle School at 7 p.m. So,
But we'll have to check on availability. We don't know which building yet.
right, so it'll be offsite for sure, but it'll be in a District 300 building, whether it be Hampshire Middle School or another one, but just keep in mind that we may get to go on the road. We've never done that before, but previous boards have. And so it could be a good time. Again, in that instance, to Mr. Hedges' point, there will not be a remote attendance option for that. I don't know how we're gonna handle Mr. Polson. Mr. Polson may have to be in person. Mr. Polson, I'm sorry, sir, you're gonna have to come join us. But we don't control their AV there. We don't control their internet or technology there, so we can't do remote.
So it's a security issue, then?
What do you mean?
Like
Capacity.
capacity issue, okay. I don't know if it was like an online security issue.
No,
I'm
it's
not an IT guy. so
They don't have.
They just don't have, they don't have this equipment, and then for us to bring something in, we don't have all the, I mean, we have the stuff that's stationary, it's mounted. I mean, we could probably try to cobble something together, but then it won't be,
This
it's
camera,
in a gym, you know?
This camera can't take a view of an entire gymnasium.
And then there's a lot of echo and all that stuff, and it's not our space, so it's just easy enough. I like to do attendance, I like to be able to record the meetings, I like to be able to post them for the community, but when you take us out of our environment, it's hard to provide services, especially when we don't have IT guys and AV guys on staff.
I heard you're an IT guy.
Well, I could run it, and then you could,
No, I'm good.
okay. All right, so that's it. That's what I got. And then there's the ice sculpture and cocoa crawl. Is that what it's called? This weekend? Should be a good time.
Is it still happening with the temperatures?
It's like, it's gonna be 40 degrees, right?
Yeah.
You better look at it quick.
Bring a cup.
I have one thing that came out of the meeting that we had for Coon Creek the other day. We were talking about fireworks, and the question was, when will they be breaking ground on the development by State and Allen? Because we're worried, I asked the question, because the fireworks, you have to be so far away. And if it's an empty house, if it's a house that's got people in it, you're.
They will be under construction, but there won't be any residences there.
Okay,
They've already broken.
okay.
It's all graded right now. They just haven't started construction. Actually, DR ordinance is not started. That's.
Oh, DR ordinance.
Still ground working, but they're just about finished.
And just one more thing, it's just a point of notification. I saw it on the news the other day. I know we've talked about cannabis, pot shops, et cetera, because of businesses coming in and out of the town. And I just wanted to share that in New York, they had a big issue where they had just licensed pot dealers, cannabis, whatever, I'm not sure what they're called, pot shops. And they only had 3, but there's like 40 of them that came. And I know New York is nothing like Hampshire.
I mean, it's kind of like
But
us.
they really don't have a way
They're not-
of dealing with these unlicensed shops, and they're not paying all the taxes and everything. So should this board move forward with something like that, just to kind of keep in mind unlicensed, you know, that they're the unlicensed people, and I just saw this on the news, the unlicensed shops were not charging all the taxes. And that's where the money's coming to the city of New York, I guess. And so if you can have the option of getting your cannabis at a shop that's half the price, because you don't have the taxes, it's an issue.
I don't think
So-
that's an option in Illinois. I think you have to be a licensed.
Well, you
shop.
have to be licensed there too,
You just said unlicensed.
because they're just opening up.
That sounds like
illegal
illegal.
shops.
It sure is, but they can't close them down right now, so they're having to find other ways through ordinances to find a way to shut them down. Yeah,
So is this a
It's not
proposed,
licensed.
like Al Capone,
nope, right across
inspired?
from Village
No,
Hall.
no.
Capone cannabis.
Yeah, no. I was saying this is like proposing because he wasn't convicted on anything other than tax evasion, so.
Right across the street from City Hall, there's a shop that's
This is
just opened.
Donald's.
So, I mean, it's kind
Close
of
enough.
like, so. It's an issue that will always be a concern for me, so I thought I would share it.
I'm sure the New York
Today.
statute is probably different than Illinois though. Hopefully that's covered.
Note to self,
Yes.
let's not be New York.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn? Question, comments? Wait, I have to have a second.
Second.
Okay, I got a second. Question, comments, concern? All in favor? Wait, why can't we do, it's not, nobody's attended remotely? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's over.